when you started in law enforcement, and for sure I didn't, I would never have thought when I started in law enforcement that I would do at least one case of that magnitude in my career. That was the furthest thought from my mind. But as we developed, as it grew, it kept getting bigger and bigger, and it was like a watermelon.
Mm-hmm. Brought to you by Defense Forensic, where we find the truth in data. Hello and welcome to Digital Forensics Redefined podcast. This week I sat down with retired Special Agent Greg Phillips from the Wisconsin Department of Justice, Division of Criminal Investigation. Over the years,
you are a heck of an investigator. I taught you well.
You taught me? I thought I was the definition of teaching an old dog new tricks.
You are the definition, but I don't know if that's it.
So, trying to get back on track here a little bit because I don't want to go into the whole educational process of teaching you how to do police work. But
yeah, right. That goes under the heading of fat chance. Go ahead, I'm listening.
So, Killer was kind of the focus. I mean, the start of he ended up being the primary target in this investigation that we've been talking about, and that kind of brought a whole new dynamic to rural Wisconsin. Really, I mean, at that point we had, at a time where we've talked about the technology and the different things that we did and stuff, but we really, at that point, it was really kind of high speed, the stuff we were doing in terms of utilizing the technology and things we had available to us. I mean, we had all of our targets on playing cards.
Yeah, that
was like unheard of up there.
Exactly.
So we had like a whole deck of cards, and we just handed, all right, you're gonna
arrest Ace, and
the Ace of Clubs is so and so, and the Queen of Diamonds is so and so.
Exactly.
That's how we passed them out, and we had
put the packets together. Spent half the night putting packets together. Yeah, I know.
So, at that point, that was like the new thing. I mean, we had computers and all this stuff to do, and that's how we utilized it. But it was still a lot. If you look at what we were doing then today, it seemed like a little bit archaic because we would do this all on a computer, and everybody would log in, and they'd have it all on their phone.
Exactly.
And all this stuff. So,
one person I do want to mention in this is Dan Carey, the prosecutor on this case. He was a very nice guy, and he pretty much listened to us when we suggested things, and to this day I often think of Dan, even though he passed away right after our case came to fruition and we got the convictions and that kind of thing.
Right. I've actually talked about him on here. I had Kevin Croninger, the current DA, who was an assistant DA under Dan.
Right.
And learned a lot from him. So we've actually talked about Dan on our podcast here before. So, but yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff then was kind of foreign to him as a prosecutor and a seasoned military veteran.
Oh yeah, that's right. He was a Marine JAG officer.
Yeah.
He was a JAG
and so we, for us to bring a lot of this stuff was new to him and new to the courtroom and the judges, and there was a lot of education and there was a lot of publicity. The internet at the time was buzzing with this stuff.
Oh yeah.
We had the business model that the gangs used that were coming up there.
Right.
We had actually the National District Attorneys Association at the time, and I might be a little off here but it was like the leader, the spokesman of that organization was the Winnebago, Illinois County DA.
Right.
And he did some congressional testimony about the business model that the gangs were using coming up from Chicago to deal with the per cap in the Native American tribes and
Right.
and how they were and doing all that. So that was just a time of gangs in rural Wisconsin from Chicago as things, they only saw on movies and stuff.
Well, and that developed into kind of a business model nationwide for not just the Chicago gangs, but some of the other gangs out west and out in New York and that kind of thing, and how they were branching out into these different areas. And then they started branching out into the suburban areas of these communities, such as the suburbs of Chicago and suburbs of Minneapolis and places like that.
Well, and now into modern times, it's, the Mexican drug cartels and stuff with the meth
Right.
and the fentanyl coming up, from
Mexico
up to Minneapolis and over to
La
my area
Crosse,
of Wisconsin.
yeah.
But at the time, Killer was kind of the focus of this case, and then, different gang members, associates of Killer that would come up, and they would rotate and do different things. But for a year and a half of our lives, Killer was a daily conversation, and the amount of work that was involved.
Right. Yeah. And trying to the other part of what happened during a lot of this also, you had reports, I had reports, but then we had to marry these reports, which meant that we had to keep these reports not necessarily in a central repository, but I'd write a report and you would have to write a report for your agency. You would write a report and I'd have to write a report for my agency. And these reports they ended up being a volume of information that we ultimately had to submit to Dan Carey and the DA's office. And this wasn't just a little notebook, a little bitty notebook.
Yeah, these were binders.
These were binders.
Volumes.
These were not.
Well, and that kind of goes to what we've been talking about. Now with the cloud and the RMS systems they have nowadays, that's literally a click of a button and you send it to the cloud and the prosecutors, secretaries log in and download it and they have it all.
Right, exactly.
Then it was literally either having somebody fax it over to the DA's office or we would accumulate it and drive over a binder.
Yeah.
That's how it worked. And we're dealing with issues that are unheard of now.
Right.
We're printing color photos and, we got to buy cartridges, go to Walmart to get ink cartridges and, the chief's upset because the ink cartridge is $49.95 and, we're printing color photos. And
we just go through ink like crazy and, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. If only Killer would have known how much, it probably cost us $119.95 to print all the photos from everything he did.
Right, exactly. So, it'd have been better for him just to get into the cartridge printing business. It'd have been illegal.
The chief we had to have an extra brat sale to afford paper to print to take over to Sparta, and just the change, and it's what 2005, 6, 7 time frames. We're not talking that long ago,
right? But and stop and think about this. When you started in law enforcement, and for sure I didn't, I would never have thought when I started in law enforcement that I would do at least one case of that magnitude in my career. That was the furthest thought from my mind. But as we developed, as it grew, it kept getting bigger and bigger, and it was like a watermelon.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I could say that.
Everybody
Watermelon.
was. It was just everything was different. I mean, how many trips did we make from Madison, La Crosse down to Chicago to do interviews?
Right.
Now you'd have them log in on their computers and you'd interview them over Teams, and you'd do it in your boxer shorts at your kitchen table. Well, maybe not that. Maybe that's a little.
Well, I did do that one time though.
But
you remember that that traffic stop we did between Sparta and outside of Fort McCoy.
Yeah, what happened?
And I ended up having to testify, and I testified from home. I did.
We pulled over. Somebody must have really
Yeah,
been
and
having a bad day.
they really pissed us off. Well, I mean, they made us very mad, and we had to do some police action, and
we couldn't have wrote a ticket between the two of us.
no.
We must have had somebody come write a ticket.
Well,
or
I
something,
don't. But we ended up going to court, or I ended up having to testify, and instead of having me come all the way up there just to testify in a traffic case, I did a telephone testimony, and I was sitting in my living room,
Yeah,
very professional.
there you go with your suit and tie on.
With my suit and tie on.
But
Yep,
You know
very
what?
professional. Me.
everybody was scared of that group of individuals,
Yeah.
and everybody knew them. Everybody up there knew of Killer or knew Killer or got dope from Killer.
Right.
You come down to Chicago to talk to people, and people knew Killer. I mean, you
Yeah.
run into some random person in another case, and they knew of
Killer.
Killer or his organization.
And
It was
he
the
did have an organization.
Oh yeah, big time.
And I found out also, well, remember Saida told us that where they live, or where they had a stash house over on the west side of Madison in a nice residential area, not far from where the Home Depot is on the west side of Madison.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that was their stash house.
And she didn't know Madison from Atlanta.
Mm-mm.
I mean,
No,
her little area of Chicago was all she knew.
right.
But she knew she'd heard about this place,
Mhm.
and that was the first time in my life where I came down. We interviewed her, and there wasn't any furniture in the house, but
Yeah,
I had to sit on a floor because in that neighborhood they couldn't sit up high because bullets start coming through the windows.
yeah,
I never was exposed to that, so.
yeah. That was a different world for you.
Yeah, so Killer just totally changed the landscape of things. Even to this day, there's people up there. Now we're second, third generation, gang member, drug dealers. They still know Killer or have heard of him. Or,
What was the lady's name that lived up in Black River Falls? That lived in the. Oh,
Yeah, I can't.
I
remember
can't
her
think
name
of her
either, but-
name.
Yeah, so it just, that case in today's day and age, which probably would never happen because you just don't see a lot of those type of conspiracy cases
Right.
anymore.
And that's what it was. It was a conspiracy.
Right.
And and we had to initially prove to Dan that we had two or more people in concert to commit a crime, and that crime was distribution of controlled substances in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat because if we could do that same thing now, it would be so much easier with the.
Oh,
With
please.
we wouldn't have to make all these trips to Chicago.
No.
We'd have everybody'd have at their fingertips.
Right?
The whole case we'd have in the cloud under one case, and people could look at it.
And
log
we
in
could possibly monitor their communications in the cloud even, correct?
Well, yeah. There's things we could do that way too. I mean, that's a whole nother gamut as far as doing that. We didn't even have any of that ability back then,
Right.
or at least we didn't utilize what was available in that regard.
Well, because back then, in order to actually run like what we call Title III or wiretaps and stuff like that, it took an act of Congress and God and anybody else that was in the neighborhood and somebody that had 50 cents that could lend us some money.
Well, when it was very labor intensive.
Oh, yeah, they were.
Yeah, I mean, you had to staff them 24/7. And
Oh, yeah, you you had to have people monitoring stuff.
Right.
And then when you had the monitors out or monitoring, you had to also have surveillance teams out. And whoa, there was days.
But we had a good time. I mean, at the end of the day, it was successful.
Oh, yeah.
We definitely would. At that point, I mean, the judges at that time. I mean, the educational part of that for law enforcement up in that area. Prosecutors, defense attorneys.
And
defense
plus,
attorneys had no idea.
Oh, no.
With the whole conspiracy thing at that time.
Plus, we had such wonderful personalities, you and I. People just loved us.
Well, I did.
Well,
I carried
but
you
see,
a little
wait a minute. I carried your water. Gee. I mean, people were just dying to confess to us. Okay, to me.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, they like me.
Yeah, after 42 laps around the vehicle.
Yeah, well, that was a whole nother
He
story
would have
for
told you
another day.
anything that day, yeah.
Yeah, no. But, you know, all things considered, I can't stress, you know, law enforcement nowadays isn't like it was when you and I were working together. They're getting such a bad rap that a lot of these guys are getting burned out. And, you know, even young guys, not to mention a lot of the young guys that are coming on the job now, they know how to play video games and that kind of thing. They know how to work computers, but they really don't know how to talk to people. And that's the biggest portion of law enforcement is your ability to talk,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and using the technology and stuff though is key as well. I mean, it's hard to be
effectively.
Yeah, it's hard to be fully rounded and
Right.
and be able to do everything that's expected nowadays, and
I think we were both fully rounded.
some more than others.
Yes, you are.
Thanks for watching this episode of Digital Forensics Redefined, featuring retired Special Agent Greg Phillips. Thanks for watching our podcast this week, brought to you by Defense Forensic, where we find the truth in data. And before you go, please make sure to click that subscribe button and post any comments you may have about this week's episode below. Also, check out our website at defenseforensic.com for more information on services for individuals and organizations that require expert analysis of digital evidence. And once again, join us right here on YouTube for future episodes.